You always answer. Second ring, sometimes first. Doesn't matter what time it is. Doesn't matter what you were doing before the phone lit up. You answer, and your voice comes out steady like it always does, like it's never once faltered. Somewhere, right now, someone is grateful for that. Grateful in the easy, unthinking way people are grateful for things that never seem to run out. And somewhere else, in the same body, at the same hour, no one is calling to check on you. You don't remember applying for this. That's the strange part. No one sat you down and offered you the position of being the one who holds things together, the one everyone quietly agrees will be fine. It arrived earlier than that. Earlier than most decisions you actually remember making. Maybe you were the oldest. Maybe you were just the one who noticed things first, who could read a room before anyone else in it knew there was something to read. Either way, somewhere back there, you learned a fact so early it stopped feeling like a fact and started feeling like your personality. If you could carry it, you should. And for a long time, it worked. That's the part people forget to mention when they talk about this. It worked. Being the reliable one got you something real. It got you trust. It got you a kind of love that looked like need. And at a certain age, need is close enough to love that you don't stop to check the difference. People came to you first, not because they were told to, but because something in you had made itself easy to lean on. You became fluent in other people's weather before you were fluent in your own. There's a particular kind of pride in that. Quiet, private. The kind you'd never say out loud because saying it out loud would sound like bragging about being needed. And needing to be needed is not something this culture lets you admit to wanting. But you did want it. You still do. Being the one people trust with the hard calls, the late night texts, the things they can't say to anyone else. That role gave you a shape. It gave you a place in every room you walked into. You were not the loudest person there, but you were the necessary one. And for years, necessary felt close enough to being loved that you never separated the two. Somewhere in there, without a ceremony, without anyone saying it out loud, the role stopped being something you did and became something you were. People stopped asking if you were okay, not out of cruelty, but out of faith. The specific, well-meaning faith of someone who genuinely believes you don't need to be asked. You built that faith yourself, one calm response at a time, one "I'm fine, don't worry about me" at a time, until it hardened into something nobody thought to test anymore. You kept it, though, the exact sentence someone once said to you that made it feel official. "I don't know what I'd do without you." You're the only one who gets it. Thank God you're the responsible one. Small things, said quickly, meant kindly, and then moved past. But you built a version of yourself around being worthy of moments like that, over and over, until being needed and being loved had fused into a single feeling you could no longer tell apart, even when you tried. This isn't a confession of weakness. If anything, it's the opposite. You got good at something most people never learn. You can read a silence across a dinner table and know exactly who needs to be checked on before they say a word. You know how to make yourself steady on command, how to sound calm when the actual weather inside you is anything but. That's a real skill. It came at a real cost. Somewhere in the process of becoming fluent in everyone else's needs, your own became a second language. One you could still speak, but haltingly, with an accent, like something you learned a long time ago and stopped practicing They knew where to find you when they were breaking. No one knows where you are tonight. You would never say that sentence to their faces. It would sound like an accusation, and it isn't one. Nobody did this to you on purpose. But the sentence sits there anyway, at the bottom of certain nights, true whether or not you say it. Carl Jung had a word for the version of us that meets the world. He called it the persona, from the Latin for the mask actors wore on stage, the face designed to be seen from a distance. A persona isn't a lie. It's a necessary translation. The part of you built to interact with other people, to hold a job, to walk into a room and be legible. Everyone needs one. The danger Jung pointed to was never having a mask. It was forgetting you're wearing it. He had another word for that, forgetting. Identification. Somewhere along the way, you stop holding the role, and the role starts holding you. You don't perform the caregiver anymore. You are the caregiver. Full stop. Nothing left over that isn't in service of someone else's need. In Jungian terms, this is what it looks like when a role takes on the weight of an archetype. Not possession like a horror film, but something quieter and far more ordinary. One identity has taken up so much room that the rest of you, the part that gets to need, the part that gets to rest, the part that gets to fall apart in front of somebody, has almost nowhere left to live. Not gone, just crowded out, for longer than anyone meant it to be. Go back further, and there's a second layer underneath the first. One the analyst D.W. Winnicott spent his career trying to name. He wrote about something he called the false self, the version of a person built early, often in childhood, as a way of surviving an environment that couldn't quite hold what they actually needed. When a child's spontaneous self, the crying, the demanding, the simply being, isn't met with steady enough care, the child learns, without ever choosing to, a different strategy. Comply, adjust. Read the room, give the room what it wants, and keep the raw, uncertain, needy version of yourself somewhere no one has to manage. It isn't weakness. Winnicott was clear about that. The false self is not a failure of character. It's a defense so effective it kept something more fragile safe, long enough to survive. The trouble is what happens when the defense outlives the danger. You are not a child anymore. The room you learned to read is not the room you're standing in now. But the strategy doesn't know that. Strategies rarely do. It just keeps running, decades later, in rooms that were never actually asking you to disappear. You keep translating your own needs into other people's language so fluently that even you sometimes can't find the original version underneath. The one that spoke before any of this started. And here's the part almost no one says out loud. The people around you are not withholding care from you on purpose. They are responding accurately to the only version of you they've ever been shown. You built something so convincing that it stopped registering as a performance, to them or to you. That's not their failure to notice. That's the mask doing exactly what a mask is built to do. There's a distinction worth sitting with here, because it's easy to blur. Having a persona isn't the problem. Everyone needs one, the same way everyone needs a coat for weather they didn't choose. The problem is what Jung called identification, the point where you stop putting the coat on and start believing you were born wearing it. Somewhere in your history, no single day you could point to, just an accumulation of small confirmations. The caregiver stopped being something you did in certain rooms and became the only way you knew how to be. Not because you're incapable of other ways, because this one got reinforced so consistently, so early, that it started to feel less like a choice and more like a fact about who you are. Winnicott's false self doesn't stay contained to childhood either. That's the part people misunderstand about the theory. It isn't a phase you age out of. It's an operating system, and operating systems don't retire themselves just because the original conditions that built them are long gone. The child who learned that steadiness got rewarded and need got overlooked grows into an adult who still runs that same program. In workplaces, in friendships, in marriages, applying a survival strategy built for one specific childhood room to every room they ever walk into afterward. The strategy doesn't know the danger has passed. Strategies aren't built to know that. They're built to keep running. What makes this particular pattern so difficult to see from inside, it is that it doesn't look like suffering from the outside. It looks like competence. It looks like the person everyone wants at their table. Nobody stages an intervention for someone who seems fine. Nobody sits the reliable one down to ask if the reliability is costing them something. Because the entire function of the mask is to make that question seem unnecessary. You didn't just build a persona. You built one good enough to fool the exact people whose job it would otherwise be to notice you were tired. Jung's own answer to this, the process he called individuation, was never about discarding the mask and living without one. He thought some form of persona was necessary for anyone to function in the world. What he asked for instead was harder, to know it as a mask, consciously, rather than live inside it as the only thing you are. To let the identification dissolve, even while the role itself stays. Most people who wear this particular mask never get that far. Not because they're incapable, because the mask works too well to invite the question in the first place. You could find him at the table where everyone had just been. The table is still set for more people than are left in the room. Chairs pushed back at odd angles, the way people leave them when they're not planning to come back to that exact seat. A candle burned down past the point of being useful, still holding a small flame anyway, out of habit more than purpose. One glass, half full, catching the last of the light. He sits at the far end where the host usually sits, where the person who made sure everyone else had what they needed usually ends up sitting. Last and alone, once the needing is over. His back is to the window. Outside, the porch light has been on for hours, waiting for a car that already came and went. He doesn't turn around. There's nothing behind him he hasn't already memorized. Just the dark yard, the empty driveway, the particular quiet of a house that was full an hour ago. He isn't clearing the table, not yet. There's a version of tonight where he stands up, starts stacking plates, turns this into something useful with his hands. But right now he's just sitting with it. The glass, the guttering candle, the chair across from him that no one is sitting in, and won't be, because no one thought to ask if he wanted company after everyone else had theirs. Here is the sentence underneath all of it, the one that doesn't get said at dinner tables or in group chats or in any of the rooms where you're busy, being the reliable one. You are lonely in a very specific way that has nothing to do with how many people know your name. This isn't the loneliness of being left out. You're not left out of anything. You're invited everywhere, needed everywhere, the first name on every list of who to call. This is the loneliness of being structurally unreachable, of occupying a role in every relationship that only moves in one direction. You are the place people arrive at when they're breaking. You were never built to be a place people arrive at just to sit with you for no reason, expecting nothing back. And the cruelest part isn't that people don't care. Most of them would, if it ever occurred to them that you needed anything at all. It can start to feel like a dynamic you built without ever meaning to. Every calm, I'm fine. Every, don't worry about me. I've got this. Every time you swallow the truth that might have made someone look at you a second longer, teaching the people around you, one small exchange at a time, exactly how much attention this particular person seems to require. So when the exhaustion finally shows, in the silences, in the way you stop answering on the second ring, the people around you are often genuinely stunned, not because they're careless, because you'd made it look effortless for years without ever meaning to. There is no clean villain in this story. That's the part that makes it harder to sit with, not easier. No one did this to you on purpose. It happened the way most of these things happen. Quietly, early, across 100 small exchanges, without a single moment that felt like a decision at the time. When it finally breaks through, and it does, eventually, no matter how well the case was built, it rarely looks like a scene. There's no dramatic collapse, no moment where everyone gathers around you the way you've gathered around them 100 times. It looks like you not answering a text for 2 days and not quite knowing why. It looks like sitting in a parked car for longer than the errand required, not doing anything, just not yet ready to walk back into the version of yourself that's expected inside. It looks like being tired in a way sleep doesn't touch, and when someone finally does notice, a friend, a partner, someone who happens to catch you at the wrong unguarded moment, their first reaction is almost always surprise. Not because they don't care, because you were that convincing. That surprise is the loneliest part of all of it, not the exhaustion itself. The confirmation, delivered gently and without any malice, that even the people closest to you had no idea, that the performance held, that it's still holding most nights right now while you're listening to this, in the dark, alone. There's a kind of quiet that only shows up after the phone has been silent for longer than usual. Not peaceful, exactly. Not the good kind of alone. Just the sound of a room that has stopped expecting anyone to need anything from you tonight, and doesn't quite know what to do with the space that leaves behind. You sit in it. That's really all there is to do. Not fix it. Not reframe it into a lesson about self-worth. Not turn it into the beginning of some story about finally learning your value. Just sit in the specific, unglamorous fact of it. Tonight, no one is calling. Tonight, the role that has organized your entire adult life has nothing to ask of you, and instead of relief, what arrives is something closer to disorientation. The half-full glass is still there, catching whatever light is left in the room. Who are you when nobody needs holding? This isn't a question with an answer waiting at the bottom of it. Some nights it just sits there, unanswered. Not because you haven't tried hard enough, but because it was never actually a problem with a solution. The way most true and difficult things aren't. It's like the table you haven't cleared yet. You could stack the plates, you could wipe the surface clean, but the room would still have held that many people an hour ago, and clearing the table doesn't change what the room remembers. There's no instinct here for what to do with the silence, and that absence of instinct is its own kind of information. You know exactly what to do when someone else is falling apart. You've had decades of practice. You could do it half asleep eyes closed, no notes. But you were never handed the manual for this version, the one where the person who needs sitting with is you, and there's no one in the room to do the sitting. So you improvise. Maybe you make tea you don't really want. Maybe you sit at a table built for more people than are left in the house. Maybe you just let the quiet be as loud as it actually is for once, instead of turning the volume down the way you always do for everyone else's benefit. The way you've done it so long, you almost forgot there was a volume knob at all. Nothing resolves in a night like this. No door opens onto some clearer version of tomorrow. The phone stays quiet the way it's been quiet, and the house holds you exactly as it did an hour ago. No more understood, no more repaired. The silence doesn't owe you a lesson. The candle from earlier has gone out completely now. No one's coming back to relight it. The table will get cleared eventually, but not because clearing it fixes anything about the glass that's been sitting there, half full and half forgotten. It just gets cleared because mornings come, whether or not anything underneath them has changed. Maybe nothing about tonight changes what tomorrow asks of you. Maybe you pick up on the second ring again, same as always, voice steady, door open, room ready for whoever needs it next. That's not a failure. It's just what's true, and it will likely stay true for a while yet. Tomorrow, and probably the day after that. There's no version of this where the phone starts ringing for a different reason tomorrow, where the people who've learned to lean on you suddenly learn overnight to ask how you're carrying it. That's not how learned patterns work, yours or theirs. Tomorrow will probably look like every other day you've had this role, someone needing something, you providing it, the whole quiet machinery running exactly as it's run for years. This isn't the part of the story where that changes, but somewhere underneath the steadiness, something has been named tonight that didn't have a name this morning. A particular kind of alone that comes from being the one everyone else can find. Not fixed, not resolved, just finally called by its right name, sitting quietly where it's always been, a little less invisible than it was a few hours ago. You still don't know what to do with it. You're not supposed to, not yet, maybe not ever in any clean way. It's just yours now, in a way it wasn't a few hours ago. Something you're carrying with your eyes open instead of bearing without noticing the weight. That might be the only thing that changes. That might be enough for tonight. And maybe that's all any night can honestly offer.